Hello everybody and welcome to this session in the Cambridge Live experience on how exam preparation can help learners, give learners a sense of purpose. My name is Angela Wright and I'm Global Product Manager Schools at Cambridge Assessment English. And this session is going to be led by Miranda Hamilton. So Miranda is Exam Support Manager at Cambridge Assessment English. She has over 20 years experience as a teacher and teacher trainer. And she has a PhD from the University of Cambridge, where her research interests were learner autonomy and educational technology. And today's session, she's going to explore in detail her interest in how learning, teaching and assessment relate to each other. So we're just still setting up, so welcome. Just to tell you a little bit about how today works, some of you will have been at previous sessions, but we're obviously working from home ourselves, so we may have Wi-Fi issues or technical issues, so do bear with us, but we'll try to make it as good as an experience as we can. To help you, we suggest you use headphones for the session to improve audio, and that you turn off anything else that's open, particularly Skype, because this can slow things down. And just if at this early stage you're seeing a slightly blurry image, don't worry, that should get better over time. It's to do with the live streaming. Now, during the session, I can see lots of you are already using the chat. Great to see you, Rome, Brazil, India, ooh, lots of places. So you know how to use the chat. There's also a Q&A box, so do use that for any questions. If we can answer them immediately, we will, but most of the questions we'll save to the end of Miranda's talk. So please be patient and we might come back to your question later. And Miranda may ask you to use the chat box during the session too. So it looks like you all know how to use it, so that's great. You'll get a certificate at the end of the session and a recording of the session. So look for them in your inbox. Okay, I think we're ready to start. So let me hand over to Miranda.
Thank you very much, Angela, and welcome to everybody to this session on sense of purpose and how exam preparation can help with goal setting and learner motivation. So I'm trying to say, okay, so creating a sense of purpose. Let's think about what that actually means. Creating a sense of purpose as we return to learning means creating certainty and a motivation to learn in these very uncertain times for our students. So let me show you what I want us to cover today. I want to begin by thinking about the challenges that our learners are facing as they return to learning post-COVID-19. And I want to look at 3 key areas where we can create a sense of purpose. They're not new areas, but they're perhaps, this is an opportunity for us to explore how we can support them through exam preparation, rethinking the importance of goal setting and the use of success criteria to create that sense of purpose and sense of certainty in these more uncertain times. And I want us to think about how important it is for teachers to be really agile and respond to the needs of the learner. So I want us to think about how we need to really revisit how we assess, how we respond, and how we adapt to learners and learning through the lesson so that we create certainty and motivation to learn. So, for the last few months, all of us, our learners, have been experiencing the world from the inside looking out. And this has meant that they've not been able to see friends, learners have not been able to see friends, they've not been able to see their family, they've not been able to go to school or even go outdoors and play. So the world has seemed a very strange place. So as they've made this transition from school to homeschooling, so through the eyes of the learner, their routine in recent months has been disturbed. The sense of direction has not been as clear as it is normally in school, when they've got the teacher to guide them and direct them and support them as they learn. The boundaries of the classroom, of the lesson, have changed, and their sense of purpose and focus has really changed for them as they've moved from school to learning at home. But this is what perhaps, through the eyes of the learner, how they may be feeling, and I think how many of us may feel, as this little girl shows here. What about my routine? What about my direction? Where's the boundaries? What am I doing? So the sense of purpose has been less than clear through the eyes of the learner. But we can help them. So through the eyes of the learner, as they go back to learning, as they go back to the classroom, they're going back to normal. But then what does the new normal look like? And that's something that I want to look at today. So what are the challenges for learners? Learners are making that transition from homeschooling, from lockdown, but where teaching and learning takes place, for many of us, is still quite fluid. So for some people, we're going back to school, and for some people, continuing to learning from home. So it's very, very fluid. And this is where we come to this notion of uncertainty and challenge for our learners. So as they go back to learning, thinking about the future feels very uncertain. We're not sure, learners aren't sure what tomorrow looks like, what next week or next month or next year looks like. It feels unclear. So I want us to now think about how we can create a sense of purpose and perhaps revisit some of the strategies that we use in class, but to perhaps put a different lens on that and think of it through the perspective of going back to learning post-COVID. Now, this is where it's really important to really think about the value of goal setting. Now, preparing for a Cambridge English qualification can be incredibly motivating for a learner. It's a really long-term SMART goal for learners. It's a long-term goal that learners can work towards. It's a SMART goal because it's really specific. It's clear what they're working towards. It's measurable. It's achievable. It's a realistic goal, and it's time-bound. Learners know what's happening and when it's happening because of the date of the exam. And of course, we know that classroom success leads to exam success, and exam success motivates learners to keep on learning. So a Cambridge English qualification and preparing for an exam is motivating. It's a long-term goal that has a very clear destination. It's a destination that creates a sense of purpose and a sense of direction. And this is because learners know where they're going. As teachers, you know how you can help them to get there. And we at Cambridge English are here to support you with plenty of support materials for the classroom and for learners to prepare for their exams. So preparing for an examination means that teachers and learners can map the learning journey, map the progress towards the exam. Now, we've looked at this long-term goal, but importantly, a long-term goal will inform our short-term goals in lessons. And that's where I really want to turn my attention to now. So short-term goals are used to signpost learning intentions. They signpost to the learners what they're going to be able to do at the end of the lesson that they perhaps couldn't do quite so well at the beginning of the lesson. So short-term goals are really motivating for learners. They really give learners a reason to learn. They create that sense of certainty, of purpose, really focusing attention, setting a clear sense of direction, and setting boundaries for that lesson. So in signposting learning intentions and outcomes, it's really important as teachers to really perhaps revisit planning those lesson goals. All teachers plan goals, but now post-COVID, perhaps it's time to revisit our attention to how we plan those goals and setting in place strategies to ensure learners can achieve them. And importantly, make goals clear to learners. Make everything transparent. So signpost lesson goals to learners. Signpost lesson goals to learners on the board. Do it at the start of the lesson and refer to them during the lesson, and then reflect and revisit at the end of the lesson as well. And goals, when we use them really effectively, really help teachers and learners to know when to offer, this is for the teacher, when the teacher needs to offer help, and for learners, when they can ask for help. And importantly, it really helps learners to see when they've been successful, because they can look back at the board, think about what they've done and think, you know, I can do this better now than I could at the beginning of the lesson. So it's important, therefore, to link lesson goals to classroom activities and signpost those connections between the goal and the activity to the learners. So it's clear really, but before an activity, it really helps to refer to the goals to the learners. Tell them, this is going to help you with and reflect on the goals. Also, talk about success and show learners how they can achieve their goals. And of course, lesson goals help you as teachers to evaluate learning and evaluate what those learners' needs are, and to plan next steps going forward, thinking about what your learners need more help with. I'm going to take a look at a goal in action. It's nothing new, but it is actually pulling apart a classroom goal that we all use, but perhaps looking at it with a different lens, thinking about it from the perspective of returning to learning and trying to create that sense of purpose and direction and focus for the learner. So let's take a look at an example goal. Here we have a goal, and the goal is by the end of the lesson, you will be able to listen for the main idea. This is the goal that the learners will see on the board. It's signposted, and we have 2 pictures. So, as teachers, scaffold the goal for the learner. Tell them, we're going to prepare to listen, and we're going to prepare to understand. So before listening, something that we often do is a prediction task. However, spend more time on this. We're post-COVID, so we're trying to really focus learners' attention. So spend a little extra time on your prediction task. How could you do that? So let's get creative with the prediction task. Elicit ideas, get creative, use images, and build a storyboard around the characters who are in the listening. Now, this is an example taken from one of our lesson plans for B1 preliminary for schools for listening. So this is an authentic lesson plan, and I'm sure the link is on the slide, and I'm sure we can share that with you. So, what are we going to do? You're my learners. I'm going to introduce you to Mandy and Simon. And we together are going to create a backstory for Mandy and Simon. Who are Mandy and Simon? Who do you think they are? If you wish, please type ideas into the chat box. So, who do you think they are? Oh, they're best friends. Oh, they are friends. Okay, that's lovely. So the general idea is that they're friends. So we're going to write this in the classroom onto the board. They're classmates, they're teenagers. Excellent, excellent. All right, so here we go. Next question. What do you think they're interested in? What are their hobbies? What do they like doing? So they're friends and schoolmates, brother and sister. Oh, they like sport, music. Ah, now that's an interesting one. Now, all the while, I'm eliciting these ideas from my learners, and I'm writing these ideas and creating a story for them. Now, here we go. Why are they meeting? What do you think? What do you think they're going to be meeting about? Let's see, she's into hip hop. Oh, it's some very creative ideas coming through here. Oh, going to a concert, doing an assignment. Okay. Traveling. Oh, wouldn't that be nice, traveling? Do you think they already know each other? Going to an Arsenal game. Interesting. They know each other. Okay, so we're all key there. We can see that they know each other. Now, I've created a story onto the board. I'm preparing my learners for listening. The next step is to give the learners more clues. So all the time, we're fleshing out this story. Aha. Now, the aim of this is to encourage learners to practice strategies that they're going to need in the exam. We're always encouraging learners to read the information. We're always encouraging learners to check the images and to think about the images with relation to the listening. So now I want you to tell me what you think the connection is between Mandy and Simon and the microphone, a concert, and a writer. What do you think is the connection? So same age, trains, yes, some nice ideas coming through here. Oh, they have their own gig. One is a reporter. Music students, yes, that's possible. They've written a song for a competition. Some super ideas. Now, what we're doing here is we're going to write these ideas up onto the board. So now what we've done is we've prepared to listen, and in preparing to listen, we are preparing our learners to understand. So learners are now invested in this story. Now they're ready to listen. They really want to know what the answers are. So now we listen. We check class predictions on the board. You check the learners have identified the main ideas, but you want to see that your learners have understood. So use the strategies that might help, such as using a mini whiteboard, elicit what they've understood. So who is Mandy? On the mini whiteboard, write your idea. If you don't have mini whiteboards, you could use a piece of A4 paper and they could hold up their ideas. You could also do this online in the same way. If you wish and you'd like to go more high tech, you could use Kahoot as a tech option and ask learners to vote on what the answers are. There was a really excellent session yesterday on using Kahoot, which if you want to learn more about, if you look back at the program, you'll be able to follow. And now it's time to look back and review the goal. So they can reflect, did I understand the main ideas? Am I now able to listen for the main idea? Did I understand? And because you've prepared your learners to listen and understand, you have set them up for success. You've created a context for success. So what was the story? I noticed a few of you may have been familiar with this. It turns out that Simon was a music journalist and Mandy is a singer, and Simon is the writer, and he's interviewing Mandy about her career, and they're on the radio. So yeah, a lot of you, I think, had got these ideas already. So, creating a sense of purpose. Let's revisit. Another strategy I'd like us to explore is the importance of supporting learners and focusing on success, really thinking about guiding them and helping them to reflect and understand how successful they can be. So, it helps to work with success criteria. Success criteria are a really useful tool to create a sense of purpose. But what is success criteria? What are they? What is the value of success criteria to the learner? Well, success criteria is basically, it's a checklist. It's a checklist that learners can use, and they can look back and tick off on the checklist to see that they are achieving their learning goals. It's really helpful to create assessment criteria, create your success criteria. And to create your success criteria, you can work with Cambridge English's assessment criteria. And you can use those assessment criteria as the basis of success criteria. I'm going to show you that in just a moment. Now, the teacher can also create success criteria with the class. So together, the class and the teacher can look at what they feel they want to work on, and then they can check back to see what they've done well, and they can feel successful. That will create a sense of purpose. Learners can use success criteria to check and assess their own work. And of course, success criteria are such a helpful tool for helping teachers and learners to set and create future development goals. Really, really effective in that respect. Shall we take a look at some examples? Now, here is an example of how you can create success criteria for classroom writing. Now, this is an example task. It's been taken from B1 Preliminary for Schools, Writing Part 1. Read this email from a friend, write your email to Alex, and use all the notes. Now, this is an example I've taken from B1 Preliminary for Schools, but of course it can be adapted for any level, for any exam. So please experiment with your own classes. So we're going to create those success criteria. Now, it's important, if we're preparing learners for the exam, it really helps to work with the assessment criteria. So in creating a writing checklist or a writing success criteria, here is an example of what it might look like. So your checklist might look something like this. For content, what do they have to do? Answer the question. What do you have to do? Encourage the learners to check and think what they have to do. For communicative achievement, ask the learners on their checklist, look, who are you writing to? Is this a formal or is this an informal email? Look, think, check. For organisation, again, a key assessment criteria. Help your reader understand your ideas. How many ideas do you need to include? How many paragraphs do you need to include? Check, check, check. So the learner can check for themselves what they need to do in order to be successful. And for language, this is really helpful because for this, you can encourage learners to use the language you've worked on this week in class. So you may ask the learners to say, use the language we've worked on in this class, use it correctly. And I want you to think about the vocabulary and to think about the grammar that we worked on this week and show me that you know how to use it. So this is a really, really helpful tool to encourage learners to look back, to think, and then to reflect on what they've done. But there's another way we can use success criteria. We can also use success criteria as a self-assessment tool. And this is really helpful to encourage learners to really look back at what they've written and to identify the areas that they need to work on, and encourage them to award themselves points for how successfully they think they've achieved these 4 points. So for content, they can look back. Have you answered the question and included all the points? The learner looks back and thinks, yes, I have done that. I'm going to give myself 5 points for this. For communicative achievement, learners look back and they check the writing style. They award themselves points out of 5 for how successfully they did it. For organisation, did they organise their ideas clearly? And they award themselves points. And then they can look back at the language and make sure that they can tick off examples of how much they've used the language they've practiced on, they've learned that week. So again, we're creating a framework that will create boundaries and create a sense of focus and direction for learners. Now, we've also got something to help you. Now, we're aware that teaching writing and supporting learners with their writing, teachers also need help. So we have created a brand new set of teacher guides for the assessment of writing. We've done this for A2 Key for Schools, B1 Preliminary for Schools, B2 First for Schools, and very soon we have another guide coming on stream for C1 Advanced. But let me tell you a little bit. The guides will help you to understand assessment criteria and guide you so that you know how you can apply the assessment criteria with your learners. We've done this by giving you examples of candidate writing and examples of examiner grades and examiner comments, so you can reflect on whether you're doing it right and you can learn from it. But more than that, the guides will offer you teaching tips for the classroom with ideas to help learners. And these ideas will help your learners grow in confidence, encouraging them to reflect and assess their writing, helping you to help them become better writers. These guides are designed to help you feel confident and to help you inspire your learners to become better writers. So we're here to support you. Okay, let's move on to the next element. In terms of creating a sense of purpose, I talked earlier about the importance of needing to be an agile teacher within the classroom. And being an agile teacher means being responsive to your learners. It means looking at your learners, assessing where they are, how they're feeling, how they feel about coming back to class, how they feel about coming back to learning, and through the lesson, assessing that, responding to them, and adapting to their needs. So I want us to look at how we can do that. Now, the ideas I'm going to show you are not necessarily new ideas, but I think as we return to learning post-COVID, it's important perhaps to take a step back and look at familiar strategies through a different lens and see that these are going to be really useful in building confidence, motivating learners. So it's an opportunity for us to collect information from learners after you've completed a task. So you can use confidence scales, create a slip of paper and ask learners to rate how confident they feel on a scale of 1 to 5. Now, I've used an example here about writing. I've used it because it's based on the previous activity we did. However, You could create a confidence scale for speaking, for reading, for listening. So create a confidence scale with key things that you want to check in with your learners. And this will help your learners become more self-aware about how they're feeling. Really, really helpful, because these confidence scales will really help you and inform your planning and your teaching. So if you learn from this tool that your learners are perhaps feeling uncertain about knowing how to approach writing, you can drill into that in the next lesson. And of course, a confidence scale will help you scaffold your learners' journey towards the exam, helping the learners feel supported and creating a sense of purpose, inspiring confidence and motivation. Now, I mentioned before that now is the time when we really need to build time into the lesson to check in with our learners' needs. So familiar strategies take on a greater significance. Sadly, we're no longer able to give our learners a hug when they need one, or just touch base with them. So I think it's really useful to revisit strategies that will just make them feel reassured. So the old thumbs up, always a good tool. Thumbs up inspires confidence with the learners. Thumbs halfway checks in with them to say that they understand some, but perhaps not everything. And thumbs down, I need more help. And of course, you as a teacher can check that your learners are with you. And that's really inspiring. It just makes them feel that you care, that you notice, that you're with them. Confident learners have an increased sense of purpose. Confident learners are ready to learn. Confident learners are ready to prepare for exam success. So simple strategies, revisit them, re-explore them, and bring them into your classroom as you return to learning. And of course, here's another old favourite that a lot of teachers use, the traffic light system. Familiar strategies yet again take on a greater significance. And these are strategies that means that you don't have to exchange paper, you don't have to hand pieces of paper out, but you can give your learners little red cards, amber cards and green cards. Red cards to signal that they need you to stop, they need a bit of help. Amber card, you might need some help. And green card, it's all okay. And these are simple strategies that help learners feel supported and confident. If they're confident, they're more motivated and they are more ready to learn and ready to prepare for an exam. So again, strategies that will work in a socially distanced classroom, because you don't need to have contact, physical contact. I also think that as we return to learning, and there is this sense of uncertainty, that it's helpful to explore reflection tools. Reflection tools are excellent because it means that it creates a sense of purpose, so learners know where they've come from, what they've achieved. It enables them to look back on their learning experience in the lesson. It sets that boundary and that focus at the end of the lesson. And notice that what we're asking learners to think about as they leave the lesson is to think about something they've learned today, something they are better at today, something they found easy. We are focusing on the positives so that as they leave, they feel a sense of achievement. But it's important also to think about something they may find more difficult, something they'd like to work on in the future. And so the exit ticket is a chance for the learners to reflect, but for you to identify what your learners need to focus on. And that helps your planning. It creates a sense of purpose. So progress, achievement, and next steps, really, really helpful. However, if we are to create a sense of purpose, we also need to focus on future learning, looking forward, a sense of direction. And I think it's really helpful for learners to have an exam preparation learning plan. However, that they should be involved in planning their own learning journey towards exam success, giving learners ownership of their learning. And this might look something like this. So learners will identify something that they need to work on, that they want to work on, that they feel is an area that they need help with. And you can use that they will identify that from the success criteria that we've talked about, and from the traffic light system and the exit tickets. They can identify what they need to work on. Here, building vocabulary. They can think about how they're going to do that and what they're going to do. So make it a meaningful plan. They can start a word list. They can learn to use the dictionary. And very importantly, with a to-do list, you need a deadline. So set a date by which time they will have started this plan and by which they will have done this. So really giving learners ownership of this. You may, as teachers, need to scaffold this and support them when you start creating learning plans with them. However, once they get into the idea of it, they can practice it for themselves. So, we've talked today about creating certainty and motivation to learn in these very, very uncertain times. We looked at the challenges that our learners have experienced, are experiencing through COVID and post-COVID. And in terms of creating a sense of purpose, we've not looked at new ideas, but we've revisited ideas that we work with in the class. So we've looked at exam preparation, the importance of goal setting, short-term goals and long-term goals. And we've looked at how we can explore success criteria. But importantly, we've also thought about you and how you can, strategies that you can use to assess, to respond, and to adapt your learning to meet your learners' needs, to create a sense of purpose, to set a sense of direction, and to motivate your learners to continue learning wherever they are, in class or at home, in these more uncertain times. So, any questions?
Hi Miranda, there's been a lot of questions coming in, so a bit of an echo there. Let's hope it's working for people. Let me ask you one to kick you off. Is it possible to use success criteria for peer assessment?
Yes, it really is. It's a really useful tool actually for both self and peer assessment. And it's helpful to start by learners assessing themselves, reflecting on their own success, so they're practiced in using those success criteria. Then that will help them when they are working with their partner and discussing with their partner where their partner has been successful. So they can perhaps read one another's work, and they can look back at the success criteria, following the checklist, and think, did my partner answer the question? Did my partner lay out the work clearly? And then that becomes a tool for discussion. But yes, it can be used very, very successfully for peer assessment.
Okay, great. And another one on the criteria was, do you think that learners are really able to assess their own writing?
I think this is where they need teacher support. The teacher needs to guide them so that they can begin to assess their own writing. It's really, really helpful for learners to become able to become reflective about what they're doing and what they're learning. And this is why the assessment criteria that I gave an example of need to be written in such a way that is accessible for those learners. So frame your success criteria in a way that you know your learners are going to understand. And at the beginning, do it together, practice using the success criteria as a class, and then they become much more confident about reflecting on their learning.
Okay, great. It was an interesting question right at the beginning. How do teachers maintain their sense of purpose, particularly when they're online teaching and they're on screen the whole time?
You know, Angela, that is such a difficult question, because I think for a lot of teachers, just like learners, everybody has been going through this period of uncertainty. And as teachers need to put on their strong face and appear confident and able to deliver their learning. I think as teachers, it's very helpful to reflect on your learners, to think about your learners, focus on the learners, what your learners need, and then planning to support them as best you can. The better prepared you feel to face your class, the better, more confidently you're able to teach your class, and the more successful you're going to feel. So I think as teachers, we need to reflect, or teachers need to reflect on their own success. Look back, what did I do well today? Focus on your own success, focus on your learners.
Great. There was a question about goal setting. Should we tell young learners what the goals are for every time? And how do we do this for very young learners when they don't really read English much?
I think it's really helpful to set goals for learners of all ages. Of course, the way in which we frame those goals will vary. So think about what is achievable for your learners and tell them what they're going to be doing and what they'll be able to do better at the end. And I think it's about framing. It's about how you write those goals so that it's meaningful for the learners. So, for example, if you're going to be looking at vocabulary for animals, we're going to learn about five new words for animals and put them on the board and tick them off. So today we've learned 5 new words for animals. We learned elephant, monkey, I can't think of 5 animals, but anyway, 5 animals. And you tick them off as you go through, and at the end of the lesson, they'll think, yes, I can do it. So make them feel successful, but simplify depending on the age and the level.
Okay, and here's another one. If a student knows his or her purpose and aim, but doesn't want to work hard or to learn more, what should we do?
Oh, that is so difficult. That's the teacher's dilemma, isn't it? So I think if you've got learners that are disengaged, I think you're going to need to really think about what that learner is interested in and to cue in to what you know is going to inspire them, and create your teaching materials to support them to feel more confident, because it's understanding why they're disengaged and they've been through such a difficult time. So I think it's about understanding where they're coming from, their lived experience of lockdown, and then adapting and trying to personalize the lesson so that it meets their needs and that you think that you can just hook in and interest them and inspire them. I hope that answers it a little bit.
Okay, we're coming to the end of our time, but there have been a lot of questions and a lot of interest in the writing assessment guides. Some of them are about, do they cost anything? No, they're free. And I think a link was included in the chat. But could you just repeat what levels they're at and tell people about the webinars that are coming up?
Yes, now, the new teacher guides to the assessment of writing. Absolutely brilliant tool for teachers. We have them for A2 key for schools, B1 preliminary for schools, B2 first for schools, and we have one coming on stream very shortly for C1 advanced. In the near future, we're also going to be developing one for C2 proficiency for those of you who might be teaching at that level. They're available on the website, so the links have been shared, but they're informative. They will give you lots of information about assessing writing, but there's plenty of teaching tips. And I think what's really helpful for you is that you've got really good examples of candidate writing and how the examiner has assessed them. And that's going to really help you to reflect on your learners' writing.
Okay, and just to let people know, there'll be webinars coming up on these in November, is it, Miranda?
Oh, yes. Sorry, I missed that little bit.
Yes,
So,
no,
yes,
don't worry.
We're going to be, there are going to be 2 webinars coming up. There's going to be a webinar to talk about the teacher assessment guides to assessing writing. There's 2. The first webinar is going to be looking at A2 and for schools and B1 preliminary for schools. And then the next webinar is going to be looking at the B2 first for schools and the C1 advanced for schools. And that will give you a guided tour through how those guides are designed and how they're able to help you to support your learners.
Great, and I think that's all we've got time for today. I know there were lots more questions, but we've tried to answer as many as we could in the time. It looks like from the comments you found this a very useful session, so thank you very much for coming, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the event.